Welcome to the Guardians of Sustainability and interviews where we cover the latest and most relevant topics in sustainability and ESG. Our very first guest is Rafael Schranz, a vetted and well-experienced certified circular economy expert. Today, we chose complex topic, Scope 3 assessment, a topic that many companies find challenging, but yet it's very crucial for their sustainability reporting. Rafael has wide experience in reverse logistic, waste management, and sustainability reporting. He has done a lot of these projects where engagement of supply chain played an important role. So he will explain to us how businesses can effectively measure, manage, and reduce these emissions in very practical way. This is an episode with a lot of advice and important insights that you don't want to miss. So let's dive in and enjoy the talk.
Hello, Rafael. Welcome to SUSTAINOVA Interviews, our exciting new content channel, which is dedicated to exploring the insights and experiences of the leaders in sustainability. We are, of course, thrilled to have you here today with us, and think we are appreciating that you are taking time to join us. So how are you today?
Thank you very much, Robin. Really appreciate the invitation. Feeling very good. Good day today. The European Union has approved today the nature restoration law, which is quite the big environmental regulation, probably the biggest piece of legislation on the continent to date. So I'm feeling very happy. In general, I would say, yeah, lots of stuff to do. There's not a shortage on work in the sustainability space. So yeah, feeling very good. Thank you very much. Hope you as well.
Yeah, thank you for asking. So can we stop for a while with the new restoration law? What do you think about that? How it will apply to some companies? So what is your insight on that law?
Yeah, I think it's as stated as a very, very big piece of legislation that actually aims to restore broken or destroyed habitats or ecosystem across the European Union, across land and sea, thereby aiming to restore 20% of the damaged land that is currently not really working anymore. And I think this was it was a very close call. Our ministry, or climate ministry in Austria, was very, very how do I say that? Very, it was not clear if that would be approved, but at a very close call, after a close call, it got approved. So this is a very happy thing that happened today, and I'm very happy about it as a circular economist. Maybe to give you a little bit of an introduction about myself in general. So I'm a certified circular economy specialist, working in the circular economy. My background is in reverse logistics and waste management. So I actually worked in the last sector of the circular economy, basically the recycling sector. So we were taking care of a lot of these reverse logistics systems in regards to reintegration of textiles, metals, biological waste streams, etc. So this is where I worked, and then I started my own company, and now working with clients all across the globe in the circular economy, thereby providing trainings on circular economy for example, circular product design, circular business models, and circular supply chains. Also focusing on Industry 4.0 technologies such as AI, blockchain, and the Internet of Things. Also helping them in the mapping processes for their resource flows, and then also taking care of their strategy development and transition plans. So this is a little bit about my background, where I come from. And yeah, really looking forward to the interview
For
today.
that introduction, I already know that you are also working with the government of the Austria, since you were mentioning the ministry. You are advisor, right?
Yes, so I'm actually a senator in the Senate of Economy, which focuses on an eco-social marketplace in Austria, right? So we're supporting small and medium enterprises, and also have an advising role for practical implementation guidelines for governments across the political spectrum, basically not affiliated to any political party, but independently working on health, on the economy, on education, on various fields concerning the Austrian industrial landscape, let's say. I'm also working in other networks, for example, the Circular Economy Forum in Austria, and on the European level, I'm an ambassador and board member of the Finance Alliance at the European Technology Chamber, where we're focusing on new alternative payment systems based on distributed ledger technology that basically states that we're going to have a very, very fast, a very efficient, a very transparent, and a decentralized financial system. So this is also very important for the future economy, just to give you a little bit of an background and a little bit of insights about my networks.
That's also great for our audience to have a proper introduction of yourself, because you look so young, and you have so many experiences, and you have already accomplished so many achievements so far. So it's very great to have you here. And so yeah, Rafael, let's start with the main topic today. We are all wondering what is behind Scope 3. We are talking to a lot of companies. A lot of companies are struggling with Scope 3 with the engagement of their suppliers. So please, can you briefly tell me why so many companies are struggling with this kind of projects?
Yes, I think this is a very, very big topic, right? And to give you maybe a little bit of background information to really bring some sort of information to the companies and to all the people who are listening there. So what we're really focusing on that, and what the piece of legislation is that actually stands behind that, is the European Sustainability Reporting Initiative. Also currently a lot more into focus with the CSRD, which actually builds on the ESRS, basically including a lot more companies, basically broadening the scope a little bit there, but that's actually the regulation that these initiatives build on. And what the overall goal is basically sustainability as a macro trend, or as a mega trend, let's say, where we're basically seeing that a lot of systems, a lot of economic systems that actually depend on the natural world are actually in danger, right? And this stems from the fact that we have a very, very linear mode of economic value creation, right? So, for example, we have linear pathway where we're actually, for example, taking resources, we're building something with them, we're then producing some products with them, with these resources, we're then distributing them, and a lot of these things, for example, land in landfill, right? So a lot of things are becoming waste. Right? So this is one thing, and that waste accumulates, for example, in landfills, where there's a lot of emissions created, like CO2, methane, other greenhouse gases, for example. So this is where the emissions come in. There is also a massive biodiversity problem. So we currently see that there's a massive die-off in plant species, in animal species. There's a massive pollution in water bodies across the globe. A lot of problems and a lot of air pollution that is happening. And these things in general, they have very, very high impacts on the health of people, right? So we know, or a lot of people should know, I mean, it's not really in the head of most people, but we should know that our economic systems are actually building upon the natural world. And if the natural world and our natural ecosystems are not really functioning, or if there's decreases in ecosystemic functioning, or in how these systems behave, then that leads to problems in the economy as well. We see that through flooding, we see that through droughts, we see that through a lot of symptoms, or a lot of problems that actually arise from this. And of course, the scope 1 to 3 is basically dealing with a complete decarbonization. So we know that all of these greenhouse gas emissions, namely most notably CO2, but there are others, for example, methane, that is actually even more potent than CO2, but maybe to focus on the CO2 part, First of all, is that since the Industrial Revolution, we have actually created a lot of emissions. And these emissions are created through various production systems, for example, in the extraction of natural resources, in basically everything that uses energy, that burns energy, right? And of course, we're burning fossil fuels on a large scale, right? And that has to go somewhere, right? So the burning of fuel, the burning of oil, and these types of things are creating actually emissions in the form of CO2 and other greenhouse gases that we don't see, that we don't smell, but we can measure them. And these greenhouse gas emissions, of course, they are bioaccumulating or accumulating in the atmosphere and thereby trapping sunlight that should actually be reflected from Earth's atmosphere outside again. Those greenhouse gas emissions are actually trapping these sunlight rays in Earth, where the sunlight is refracted from Earth again outside and then basically mirrored again back in, or it is blocked, right? And thereby the world heats up. So this is like where the 1.5 degree goal comes in from the Paris Agreement. So we want to limit the average temperature increases to 1.5 degrees, because we know that this warming of the Earth has drastic effects, like changing weather patterns.
Speaking of that, by coincidence, I just today found some really interesting post on LinkedIn where some expert just reported that according newest data from IPCC, warning that our global warming doesn't stop. Instead of they keep rising, and that this CO2 is rising in the air as well. So we are on the journey actually we are moving actually far from that achievement to be close to 1.5 Celsius.
Yes. So there's a definite risk of not achieving this. This is definitely so, and I would agree with that. It is worth working for this, of course, right? And we have solutions on how to minimize that CO2 generation in the atmosphere through various means, through adaptation, through mitigation, and in various systems, so across different systems. And this is where actually maybe to come to your question again, the scope 1 to 3 assessment actually gives us an overview of where these emissions occur in a value chain. So we're now because a lot of companies have very, very complex supply chains, we had to come up with some sort of a system to basically identify emission hotspots. So scope 1, for example, deals with direct emissions, where companies are measuring the direct emissions that they produce, right? The scope 2 deals in purchased energy systems, for example, or purchased energy, and where the emissions are created not by the company but by some external company. And then the scope 3, all the indirect emissions, right? So this is like where emissions are created that are not, or through processes that are not really controlled or owned by the reporting company, right? But because this is a very complex supply chain, with a lot of stakeholders involved, possibly hundreds of different companies involved, this is where that concept has come in. It actually comes from project management to really run a decarbonization program across the world. So this is maybe to answer and to give you a little bit of an introduction to that topic.
So back to my question, why it's so hard for a company to approach their scope 3? Because from our experience, we can see that a lot of companies are actually doing something, and they are actually able to do something within their scope 1 and scope 2, which is like direct and indirect emissions on their processes, which is concerning to their company directly. But a lot of those companies are avoiding maybe also their whole supply chain. And this is something that we are wondering why we are obviously know that it's because it's ours. You already mentioned that there can be many stakeholders, some hundreds of or even thousands within the bigger companies. So let's move to another question. When we will focus on that scope 3, because this is a really roadblock for the companies. Where this project starts and what is the full range scope for the company? Let's say I'm a manager, I'm a CEO of the company. Where my attention goes, from this point of perspective of this project, where should I look at?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so basically it really starts typically with the identification of the potential sources of indirect emissions, right? So we're looking at value chains, right? Or basically value creation, right? How is value being created, right? And for this, you really need to look at your entire supply chain to really have an underlying framework for the reporting that comes afterwards, right? And basically the full range that we can say is across 15 different categories. So ranging from basically purchased goods, capital goods, upstream transportation, distribution activities, business travel, for example, leased assets. And this is then also dissected into upstream and downstream scope 3 emissions. So for example, end-of-life treatment of sold products, for example, or waste management activities that would happen at downstream scope 3, and upstream scope 3 would be, for example, the purchased goods and services, the extraction, the raw materials that go into these products and services. And then the starting point would then be, well, I need to know who am I actually working with, right? I mean, this sounds maybe easy, right? But this is what it forces companies to do, right? To say, well, who am I actually working with? Where are those people located, for example? And this alone gives a lot of transparency. This alone gives a lot of insights into my own operations, for example, because I then know, well, I have 150 suppliers. 50% of them are in Europe, 50% of them are, for example, in Asia, or we have a different distribution of these suppliers. I know then what companies and what suppliers are actually extracting what raw material, know the environmental aspects to that extraction. I can then know other social parameters, for example, working conditions or the conditions that workers are in these extraction methods and these extraction processes. So overall, this would be like a quantitative assessment. So how many suppliers are there? Where are they? Right? The contact details, these types of things, right? And then basically we're going through or the companies should go through these 50 different categories. And of course, there are also different protocols and methodologies that are underpinning these things on how they should actually collect that, right? So environmental data can be either gathered through like primary data sets or secondary data sets, questionnaires, utility bills, these types of things, right? But I would say overall, it's a complex endeavor. It's not to say that this is just done in 1 week or something, or 1 month. This is like a transition into really safeguarding the rights of people. This is really a transition into a more heightened awareness into environmental adverse effects that my company has. Right? So this is not a fast thing to do, but overall, I would say we can definitely go into more detail on this topic if you want, but just to give you a little bit of an overview on how that works.
Yeah, all right. So let's be practical right now. So which exactly, or do you think that companies already know which data they should be requiring from the suppliers and partners? Because this is really wide topic, downstream, upstream partners, and through the processes. Does the companies already know what they are asking for?
Well, probably not. So I have a feeling that it's a little bit overwhelming currently for a lot of companies. So data collection is really the most important thing, right? So this is like where the most energy is going into, right? What data do I need? How am I actually doing this? And I would say there are some problems associated with that, right? First of all, companies would need to know that, for example, they need to focus on certain emission factors, right? They need to focus on certain activity data, right? So activity data would be amount of materials purchased, for example, what material is purchased, for example, transportation distances, for example. So anything and any metrics that are really related to some sort of activity, right? Where you can actually then calculate the emissions that are associated with that process or activity. And then also we have energy consumption data. So that could be done through utility bills, invoices, these types of things. So probably in the kilowatt per hours, right? In that unit, then we have data on waste management, for example, kilograms of materials wasted, these different things, right? So there always needs to be a numerical value to a certain activity that we can then translate into emissions that are actually generated with a certain process. Okay.
Well, I can really
Example
imagine
would be
this is really wide range of the data where I should be looking for. Um, can you tell me some practical? Let's say let's choose one data like the obvious one. How should I get it like from my supplier? Let's say I have a supplier in whatever Vietnam, for example, is my supplier of material, and can you explain on one exact example which data I should require from him and how should I assess them?
Yeah. So for example, let's take purchase goods and services, right? So for example, data on volume that you would need, right? So how much are you actually purchasing of a given good, right? That's why it's called purchase goods and services. Then also, so what material is it, right? And then you can basically have a numerical value on this, right? So kilogram of steel, liters of paint, for example, right? And then we can compare that to environmental databases because we know in these environmental databases what chemicals are in certain types of goods. We have ingredients, there we have also regulations in terms of the REACH regulation, for example, on chemicals. So we have life cycle assessments and environment data already done on various materials, let's say, and we know the emissions that are associated with that, right? So this would be one example. On transportation, for example, very practically speaking, would be distances traveled, right? So where are you located? Where are you transporting that? What is the distance between these 2 points, right? So distance traveled, and then also what is the mode of transportation, right? Because for example, a delivery via shipment and a delivery via plane or a train is something different, right? So there we have actually the fuel that is being used and the emission factors that are associated with a certain mode of transportation. Okay, so this would be two very practical examples on how we're doing this. Okay.
All right. Perfect. How should companies approach their suppliers? How to engage them? Because getting those data from the one supplier can be challenging, but can be done from my point of view. But imagine that you have hundreds of suppliers. How should I approach them to get these data to my spreadsheet or to my system?
Yeah, so first of all, the supplier engagement is critical, right? So we're looking at a very, very complex dynamic and a very, very complex undertaking. So I would say clear communication is key, right? So explaining importance of scope 3 and then also the benefits of having that transparency, right? Because we need to make it clear to the suppliers that actually it's not only that we just want data from them, But through this data collection, through that increase in communication and basically coming together on this leads actually to an increase in supplier and buyer dynamic. So that increases cohesion in a business network as well, right? So there are benefits associated with that, but clear communication on why we're doing it, what benefits does that have, what data needs to be collected. This is key. Collaboration would be another one, right? So that they're working together and to really develop or using existing data collection methods to provide support, which then also goes in line with clear communication, right? To tell them, well, this is the method that we're using. This is in line with the GHG protocol, for example, and these are the types of data sets that we need. Although, of course, one needs to be careful to not overwhelm the suppliers, right? So because if you're sending them all of the regulatory texts, for example, all the different scope 3 calculation methods and these types of things, they probably will be a little bit overwhelmed. So there's a little bit of a balance on giving them all the information that is available currently publicly, and giving them too little information. So there needs to be a little bit of a balance here. And of course, incentives. So incentives, for example, can be given, right? And of course, would also be important because it should be appreciated by companies if suppliers are actually working in that scope 3 assessment process, right? Because that shows that they're actually willing to make a change. They are willing to also protect nature, to also protect the rights of people, and to also help reduce costs and reduce CO2 across the value chain, thereby bringing forward that decarbonization process. So that helps in terms of cost reductions. So basically everyone benefits from these cost reductions, right? So to make it clear to them, those are the incentives that we actually want to have. So it's not only that environmental aspect, but it's also the economic aspect and also the social aspect. So we have a threefold bottom line win here that we can actually achieve. And this is clear or very important to communicate as well.
Listen, right. Yeah, the simplicity of the topic is really quite challenging because this is really wide, and even here in let's say in Europe, where all those regulations and all those laws are popping up, and we can actually understand some of them more or less, but to explain the topic and engage your suppliers mainly from outside of Europe, that's quite challenging because they don't know about those stuffs, and they are not even getting the data for their own processes. So the key is simplify those things for them and start talking to them. This is something that companies right now may be underestimating because they are talking with them about the business, not about the consequences of the business. Am I right?
Yes, exactly. So I think this is to convince someone to do something, you need to give them some sort of an incentive, right? And to really tell them what they get out of it as well, right? So this is normal business practice. Companies should know this. But as you said, right, that the complexity comes from also having different languages. So, for example, if you're working with a supplier in the Middle East or in China or in Asia or something like that, right, that the language barrier alone, right, this is something that's problematic. You're dealing also in various different jurisdictions, for example, where there might be different environmental regulations as well. And then you have also the data gaps, right? So probably a lot of suppliers simply don't even have that platform where they're actually generating that environmental data, for example. So multiple problems.
Exactly, those data. So for example, what to do if the companies fail to collect some data, some necessary data for their assessment, because it can happen, right? A lot of those companies aren't collecting those data, and if they aren't collecting, so how should I collect them? So in this case, what to do if I'm failing at this point?
Mm-hmm. Well, we need to be a little bit patient, I would say, because we're actually dealing in a global industrial shift in the whole entire economy across basically every industrial sector, right? So we know that there are data gaps, and we know that there are suppliers that might not have that data. That said, investors, regulators are putting increased pressure on companies in actually providing that data. So there should be a clear communication that this needs to happen. But there should also be a clear communication that if the data is not provided over a certain period, that actually leads to problems in the business structure. Because if investors and regulators are demanding that, and some suppliers do not provide that after, for example, a grace period or something like that, right? Then one needs to think about if that supplier is actually suitable for the future of my business. Because I'm not saying you should just jump ahead and say, well, you have not given me that data within 1 month, so we need to give them a little bit of time as well. But clearly saying to them, at this point in time, the data needs to be there. Otherwise, for example, we need to look for other suppliers, for example, right? Because it hurts our own business over the long term, right? So if you're dealing with suppliers that simply don't want to participate, if you're dealing with suppliers that simply don't want to generate data on their environmental impacts, on their upholding the rights of their workers, for example, on upholding different regulations, environmental regulations, this could lead to a problem in the future, simply because the fact that those investors are ramping up pressure now. Right? I mean, this is required by law, right? So if you're not reporting on this, then that's a factual risk for your company.
Yes. What do you think about the different data collection system? Because I have experienced that some of companies already starting to the assessment of their suppliers. They are starting with some questionnaires, and they are getting some data. They are maybe not getting some of the data because those companies, we have agreed that they don't possess them. And on the market, there are several other solutions that are based on the averaging data but it can be delivering different results, right? Because
Yes.
the traveling data, for example, you can calculate in many other ways, So what do you think about those differences? Because in the end, it's about the results, that which data are you operating with, and there can be kind of sense and differentiations, right?
Yes, exactly. I think you mentioned a great point there. I think that the method of calculating various aspects across a category in the scope 3 assessment, for example, differs from platform to platform, right? And possibly there is a problem in actually knowing what method they are actually using in their platform. Because if they would give out the method on how they would calculate it, it might be a problem for that, because they simply don't want their competitors to know, for example. They simply don't want the market to know how they are actually calculating this. So as you said, it can lead to various results. And this is actually where I have currently my problems with these all-in-one platforms, let's say, that are just saying to their suppliers, well, we need just these type of data sets, these type of data sets. There are different data formats, for example. So this alone is something companies need to look at. So you have different data formats, you have different calculation methods. And this is why I'm currently calculating that very, very strictly on the regulatory structure. So there are formulas, there are environmental databases, there are clearly guidelines from for example, the GHG protocol on how that should be calculated with the emission factors and these types of things. And then using various platforms to actually check if these calculations are also coming up, or if they're different or something like that. But I really currently focus on It's a very, very strict way of calculating that to be really in line with the environmental regulations, to be really on the safe side. Because I simply don't have insights into the calculation methods, as you said. If I don't know how something is calculated, then I simply cannot trust the platform and just say, well, this is the result. So I need to verify that somehow. And this is why I'm very, very hesitant of using currently these all-in-one platforms, although I think they will get better and better and better over time, if they're a little bit transparent as well with their calculation method, let's say. But yeah, that's my take on it.
All right.
Currently.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. We are building that platform on SUSTAINOVA where we have the category, special category only for the software solution. And every day I'm sourcing new ones. There's a lot of them. Many of them are the all-in-one platform, so all-in-one solutions. But I agree with you that those methodologies are also always hidden, and many companies doesn't want to provide them. So my fear from this point of view is the same, because I would like to know which kind of data am I getting, and from some perspective of some softwares that we have been talking with the founders, with the people behind, we have experienced that some of those systems are relying on the averaging data, and some, they are not working with a specific, or on the opposite, there are some softwares that is like only the platform where you have to enter your own data. But the problem can be that me as a business, I don't have the data, and I don't know how to get them done to be filled in the softwares, right? So
Exactly. Yeah.
From my perspective, from my point of view as a business owner, for example, how should I decide? Because right now I want to start a project with engaging the suppliers and getting the data from them. Should I hire you as a individual consultant, or should I trust to the solution? And maybe in some part of way, this can be really beneficial, right? This solution can really help me with the calculation, but how should I, decide which way to choose?
Yeah, so I would say if you don't have a department to actually dealing with that kind of stuff, and if you don't have really sustainability experts and circular economy specialists that are really dealing in that stuff, I would not do it yourself. This is why there are a lot of people where you can outsource that process, but it's always good to have a verifiability in your data sets, right? So for example, if I'm getting an invoice from a third party, for example, right? And that third party, for example, is a state company or a state-owned company, for example, for electricity consumption or something like that, right? Then I have a numerical, quantifiable value that I can trust to a certain percent, right? Because I can assume that a state-owned multi-billion-dollar company that deals in energy supply for a given company or for a given supplier is not lying on their invoices, right? I mean, there is a possibility that they are lying, right? But it's a little bit more unlikely. They're probably stating the truth, right? Otherwise, we're just talking about multi-billion-dollar fraud, right? But I mean, there is a risk that is happening, right? But I would say there's always a third-party verifiability aspects to this, right? If you're getting a data set from a supplier, I don't know from where, and they are saying, well, we have used 1,000 or 1 ton kilogram of steel, right, for these operations. Well, everyone can say that. Right? And this is actually where the sustainability specialists and circular economy specialists and people who have dealt in that field a very long time, have worked in waste management, have worked in these fields, know how much lying there is actually. Right, so this is a very important thing to know, and to also, this is where the greenwashing aspect comes in. This is where the European Union also says, well, you cannot put sustainable on your products anymore because everyone is saying that now, right? Um, this is definitely what needs to be stated and what needs to be articulated to business owners, right? That there is a clear risks and clear, how do I say that, clear need of actually verifying these data sets. And this is why personal meetings are important. This is why, for example, auditing is important. This is why, for example, visiting your suppliers in these given regions is important. As a business owner, if I have a small or medium enterprise, maybe I use the time that I have in the summer and fly there, or I don't know, let them show me via virtual call, for example, how those operations look. I don't have to fly there, but then I would see how it looks there, for example, right? Some verification needs to happen, of course. Of course, the degree of verification, the granularity of verification is subject to the business owner. This is also subject to costs, I would say, because there's a cost prohibitive element to visit 170 suppliers, of course, as a business owner.
Mentioning the carbon footprint behind you, right?
Oh, sorry, what?
Not mentioning the carbon footprint of those travelings to your suppliers.
Exactly. Yeah. So if you're going by train, right, that takes even more time, right? If you're going by plane, that increases your carbon footprint for a short period. So, yeah, this is something that needs to happen. But I think through the regulations, it will get better and better and better. It will show various suppliers that are actually doing greenwashing. There's the internet where you can research a lot of things about various suppliers, a lot of platforms that have dealt, for example, with these suppliers that actually came to the conclusion that they're not trustworthy and different things. So you have secondary data sets that you can then use and come to a conclusion. I think with everything, you cannot be 100% sure, but you can get to a very high percentage of actually making sure that these data sets.
All right. Thank you. In your work, in your experience on your project, are you using some of the tools or are working? You were mentioning that you are verifying and auditing some data from the reliable sources and databases, but from the, let's say, calculation perspective, are you using some trustworthy, well-established tools that you are also using in your projects?
Yes. So for me, it's a little bit more that I use. So I'm not only using an emissions calculator or something for scope 1 or 3, but that also includes a circularity assessment, where we're actually looking at different value loops. For example, for water, material, energy, renewable energy, reintegration rates or circularity rates, and then also basically how much emissions these things are creating, also the materials that are being used, and this platform that I use. I don't want to make ads on that interview, but these tools that I use that are actually created by some of the leading consultancy agencies like PwC, Deloitte, multi-billion-dollar companies like Shell, different banks, various companies in multiple sectors, right? So that are actually dealing in these in the creation of these platforms, and they have a mathematical modeling that is open source. So I can go ahead and then basically verify how they're actually calculating these emissions, how they're actually calculating the circularity rate of a given product or of a given energy system or water system. So that math is available. Right? So I can check how they are doing that. Also was in contact with the inventor of that platform and basically talked to him and what his insights are and where does he come from. And so this is where I have an increased trust because I know what companies are involved. The UN was involved in that. Again, Deloitte, PwC, and these types of companies. So that leads to increased trust.
Those platforms and those tools can be used by the company itself, or is it need to go through some consultants and experts like you?
That can be used by the company itself, although the company probably might need some help in how to use that platform and what all of these different metrics mean. So, for example, the circularity rate, right? or the discharges in water bodies, or reintegration rates, or there's the share of renewable energy system, and these types of things, right? So they can use it themselves if they're doing the research on circular economy and sustainability themselves, but there needs to be a certain element of research associated with that. Otherwise, it's going to be a little bit harder to use that themselves. But I can show you definitely that platform.
All right. Should I conduct the due diligence on the other aspects during the assessment besides only the environmental factors? For example, like social aspects, child labor, and or working conditions. Are those the data that I should target in my project, like within the scope 3, or is it only environment focused?
Well, it's about the emissions, right? So that's actually the thing that is currently a lot of people think that this is where the work is, right? I mean, the work has not even started after scope 3, right? I mean, this is like only emissions that we're talking about, right? Then you have the circular economy, then you have the water systems, depollution, the chemicals, you have the social rights, you have or social aspects, and then you have the governance aspects, right? So the environmental part is only one piece out of 3 parts, right? And also the CSRD then focuses on, again, social aspects, governance aspects, and these types of things. And then you have various metrics on what you need to report on that as well, right? So I think people are overwhelmed now with scope 1 to 3, but unfortunately I have to tell a lot of people that there's a lot more coming, right? So this is a journey, I would say, but we have certain aspects on how to quantify various aspects of social aspects as well, how to quantify governance aspects and these types of things. So you have certain metrics and certain ratios that you can use in these types of reporting requirements. So
that's really wide range of the processes that I need to focus on. Just to calm down the audience that are listening right now and those companies, we have the time, right? Like you said, this is a long-term journey. You don't have to do that within the year or something. And there is probably, but since this like long-term journey, it's more important to choose the right partner to start with, and choose and have some roadmap of the activities. So it does make sense, right? So this is something that we probably agree on, that sending only the questionnaires just to get some data, just to start something. It's great, but maybe it's not the best way how to approach that, or the sustainability in general. Maybe it's better to sit down to draft the strategy, right? To have the roadmap written and to have the clear pathways how and when and where I will be getting those data and how we'll assess them, right? Because it's not only the carbon calculations.
Yes, exactly. So again, clear communication is really important, as you hit the nail right on the head there, I would say. To have a clear roadmap on what needs to be done first, the emissions assessment on the environmental part, and then basically giving them the time to actually also including the social aspects, the governance aspects, and these types of things. Sustainability is a journey, right? That the regulators want to see that people care about various things. For example, the environment, for example, about their people, for example, how they lead a company, etc. Right? So this is like where we also need to tell them and to also calm the people a little bit down, because it's there's a lot more time that they have, right? And they don't need to freak out now. So it's very important that they understand, why are we doing this? We have a lot of problems in the economy, and we have a lot of various trust issues. We have a lot of problems in the ecosystems, in the economy in general, through inflation and these types of things. So we really need that shift in the economy, and that we can only do this on a local level when all the companies are actually helping us there, right? But again, if if you have, for example, a project management company like yours, this is great, right? Because a project management company that actually deals from A to Z on what needs to be done, to really breaking down the regulatory texts, what they are about, to really translate that into normal English, for example, let's say, right? And to really give the companies to say, well, these are the 15 categories. We need data sets in the form of X, Y, and Z, right? And then we have these metrics that we need. You need the data sets on these types of things. Please look out for those things and the barriers that you have there, and the possibilities that you have there. It makes it more clear, right? And it really breaks down the complexity. Right? And I think this is where people are, they will be relieved in the future, right? On how many guidances there are and how many people are actually working in this, and what the partnership will bring them, right? To, for example, through the trainings and basically having like a conversation that we both have now, right? So to really say to them, well, let's reduce that complexity a little bit. You have people here that actually know their stuff, and we're not going through 160 pages of regulatory text, but I will tell you exactly what you need to do, when you need to do it, and in what time frame. Basically creating a transition plan, and then that's going to take time, right? But again, it's a long-term thing. There's massive opportunity in doing this. I would say in the form of cost reductions, in the form of reduced environmental impacts, and therefore increased reputation with investors. So the social aspects that are associated with it, where companies can really have a win in there, because the younger people, their perception is that they want to support and they want to buy products from companies that are actually want to make things better, and not just be, don't really care about people, don't really care about the economy, don't care about the planet, just using nature, just extracting, and selling everything into markets without any regard for life, for creation, for the regeneration of the planet, and for non-destructive behavior. So there is an underlying process that is going on as well, where there's a little bit of a.
All right, Rafael, speaking to Scope 3 assessment, because it's carbon-oriented project, how it's connected with the reporting itself. Because from my perspective, if I'm doing this project, I'm getting prepared also for the reporting, right? So, for example, right now, people, companies that have to prepare themselves for the reporting itself, and they are doing, or they are wondering if they should approach their suppliers for the getting data, how it's connected between each other.
Yeah, so this is a good starting point to really map out your value chains, to really map out your emission hotspots, and to really look at the emissions, right? And then, of course, for the reporting stuff, you have a principle called double materiality, which is very important. Right? So people have to focus on the double materiality aspect of the CSRD and of the ESRS, which actually states that, first of all, you have impact materiality assessments, and then you have financial materiality assessments. And these two things, impacts, for example, deals in, for example, what impacts are you having on the environment? For example, what impact does this process have on your business, etc., and how actually that also has impacts on your financial statements, on your cost structure in the company, and these types of things. So these two aspects need to be considered. And in that Scope 3 assessment, you can actually then gather that data, and that also gives you certain data sets for that impact materiality assessment. So when you know what processes, for example, are occurring upstream in the extraction process of your raw materials for your goods and services, for example, then you know that that can actually be included into your impact assessment or impact materiality assessment, right? So what impacts does that have on, for example, biodiversity? What impacts does that have on emissions, on, for example, water pollution, and these types of things? So that helps you in that it is a starting point and it helps you basically for your overall reporting. But the reporting that there are a little bit of various other data sets that you need to include then into your reporting. That the scopes 1 to 3 emission associates, that the emission assessment is focusing on the environmental aspects of this, right? So there are additional things that one needs to do, but again, these things are very clearly defined in the regulatory texts from the European Union, and this is where just the translation needs to happen on to say, well, you have a good structure now. You have started your journey, your decarbonization journey, your ESG journey. This is the scope 1 to 3. And then basically now we're going into the reporting, basically. And for this, you would need additional data sets like that A, B, and C. So this is, it's just a translation thing. The texts are clearly defined. The regulations are very clearly defined. And I would say, the reporting comes then afterwards, but the scope 1 to 3 assessment is a good starting point, and it gives you a lot of transparency.
Yep. All right. That's good to know. Not only based on this interview with you, but also with the direct experience, I can say that you are really with it on those projects, and you can really know what to do. But still, there have to be some challenges in such a project, even for you. Am I right?
Definitely. I would not say that I'm a perfect person and that I know everything, right? So this is a very, very complex endeavor. I have to learn every day. Basically, I have to do my research every day. So it's a very, very fast moving space. Maybe just to give you an insight on what I actually have to do, right? So I need to look at new materials that are coming out, right? Technical and also biological materials. I need to look at circular business model innovations. I need to look at circular supply chains for the future, on how to connect that. New tools that are coming out for these assessments, different methodologies. These things are very fast moving. I mean, one can imagine how many researchers actually come up with different things across the globe in one day, right? And how many new ideas and how many new things are actually coming up. New technologies. For example, I was currently working for the government in Austria on the new programs for 2025. The Horizon programs that actually the European Union wants to fund. So they were consulting me to basically look over this, where we have various new technologies such as photonics, quantum computing, these types of things. So this is AI, blockchain, Internet of Things, digital twins. There's so much happening that I have to be honest, it's challenging to keep up. There's like couple of hours every day, of course, to do research, to basically always learning new things. And I think this is a very important thing for sustainability specialists in general, and circular economy specialists. You simply cannot stop learning. It's just like an approach that you need to have. If you think you know it all, pretty much lost the game. Right? So this is a very, very important thing. So lifelong learning, very important for the future.
100% agree. I can underline that. But yeah, it's also important to say that those companies doesn't need to freak out because all those things, because there are some people that can actually help them who are doing their homework already, and they can help them with this topic. And nobody is perfect, like you said. So it's better to start somewhere, somehow, instead of doing nothing, right? Because
exactly. This is exactly the point.
I can do something wrong, but it's better to do something that's doing nothing, right?
Exactly. I mean, everything that you start anew, you'll definitely have some flaws. And as stated, there is no perfect data set across an entire value chain spanning multiple jurisdictions, right? So there are problems, of course. There are data gaps. It's just what you do with it, right? Some people are frustrated by it and are going into negative spiral downwards, and other people say, well, hey, there's a problem, how do we solve this, right? So to have a productive and positive attitude on things. And as you said, to really break down the complexity. So if people know, or if people need some sort of initial meeting of 1 or 2 hours, or some sort of a short training to really go through with them through all of these different topics on what they would need to do in the future, this is definitely possible. So I think that there are so many topics that it's important for companies to maybe know, well, where are we going anyway? So what is coming there for the future, and to really give them the picture of, well, the scope 1 to 3 assessment, the social aspects, the environmental aspects, economic aspects. That's definitely possible, and this is what we can also offer everyone who's listening. So there's definitely a possibility of actually receiving education. So education is a very, very, very big part in all of this. People, they have so many questions, and to really answer all of these questions to their satisfaction is a very important thing as well.
Yeah. So that's was something I was gonna ask you about. If me as a person from the business, from the company, I want to start with this project by my own, if I can approach you only for some parts, or even the starting baseline, or to approach you to give me proper introduction to set up with me, actually not for me, but with me, the roadmaps, and to assure me how to getting those data, because some of those companies want to learning to engage their suppliers, and this is right pathway, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So just reaching out, basically sitting together and having a conversation on what needs to be done, how to structure this, and then basically moving ahead with very, very clear KPIs, what needs to happen when, how long these different processes take, what you can expect in terms of timeframes overall. Yeah, and also additional information on, for example, what is actually sustainability, right? So where does it really come from, right? To give people a little bit of a background, because I'm actually in my trainings, I often go back in history to the year 1772, right? Basically explaining to them that that's where sustainability actually started. It's actually an agricultural concept, basically, and saying, well, this is what sustainability really means. And then most of the people are saying, what? It just makes click to them, because they hear that word, but not a lot of people can really actually define that. And this is where the definitions and the terms are very important now, because there are multiple definitions and that terms in regards to sustainability. This is very important. And also we have now the ISO standardization on circular economy principles, terms and definitions, and these types of things, definitions on value networks, definitions on ecosystemic analysis, and these types. So the ISO standards are already also there for the circular economy. They have come out a couple of days ago. So yeah, everything is available. It's just the company owners and the CEOs just need to reach out and basically say, well, I want to learn a little bit more about that. And after 1 or 2 hours, a lot of things will be solved for them. So that this drastically lowers their chaos that they might have inside, or their
that was the
worries
perfect words for my final question. What should be the first step for the companies in order to get of this scope 3 assessment chaos, or sustainability assessment chaos in general? What should be the first step?
The willingness to care. That's a fundamental underlying principle that people need to have in their minds. If they don't care about environmental parameters, or if they don't care about anything other than their bottom line or how much money they're making with their products, they won't do it. You need to have some sort of an internal decision to actually focus on things that are a little bit greater than your company, or a little bit are worth considering, let's say. Right? But, I mean, we're all in this together, right? And there needs to be a certain sense of we are responsible. We are people on this planet that need to take care of our planet and take care of our resources, right? We need to be stewards of creation. This is literally what we're talking about here. This is the underlying fundamental principle of caring. We're here to protect creation. We're here to protect life in general. This is not that we actually want to destroy things, but we actually want to protect life in that regard, because we see the problems and we see the destruction in various aspects of the globe. And I would say this is a very important internal thing that everyone needs to have for themselves. So the ability and the willingness to care about others and to care about the animal kingdom, the plant kingdom, and these types of ecosystems. So caring is a very, very big
Perfect.
part.
Literally perfect ending, Rafael. It was really great to have you here. Thank you for sharing your experience. Thank you for a lot of insights from your work. I really enjoyed that conversation. I believe that it was really valuable also to our audience, to many companies that are addressing this topic these days. And for you guys, we have a Rafael who is really vetted experts on not only on this topic. So you can really feel that from this interview as well. So feel free to reach him out. Also on our platform available in the category of the experts. Rafael, thank you again for your time. And hopefully we'll stay in contact for additional content. It's always great to talk to.
Definitely. Thank you also very much for that great interview. Really appreciated the invitation, and also really appreciate your work there. Thank you. You're doing a great job, very professional. So keep up the great work at SUSTAINOVA, and really, really happy to be a part of this and to really driving this forward. So thank you very much to everyone's involved, and to the people in the background and to your team who have made this possible, the interview. So thank you also.
Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Thank you. You too as well. Bye-bye.